Awesome. So it looks like it is about time. Let's get this ball rolling. Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Unleash the Power of AI with Google Workspace. In today's session, you'll be seeing the transformative power of AI and understand how the functionalities within Google AI will supercharge your team's productivity. This deep dive will show you the latest AI innovations integrated into Google Workspace, as well as live demonstrations showcasing the AI tools in action. Just a heads up, this meeting is being recorded and all registrants will receive a link to view it later this week. We do ask you to stay on mute because there is a pretty sizable audience for today's content. So before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Nicholas Sifko. I'm a sales development rep here at Wursta. Joining me today is Brian Berchanowski, our AI expert and the change management manager at Wursta.
Thanks, Nick. Glad to be here.
Likewise, I'm excited to get started and learn more from you. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn. One of our colleagues will paste our profile links in the Meet chat. Awesome. Again, thanks everyone for being here. In case you didn't know already, this event is being hosted by your premier IT partner. Our mission is to help organizations maximize the use of the cloud. We work side by side to help clients make good technology decisions and grow their businesses in ways they wouldn't have the ability to do otherwise. This helps organizations develop cultures of continuous innovation powered by real-time collaboration. With all that collaboration, however, organizations have a lot to worry about in terms of technology. So that's why we're here today, and we've got our AI expert, Brian, on the call. I'll pass it over to Brian so you can dive into our first topic for today.
All right, thanks, Nick. So first, we're just going to talk a little bit about what is generative AI and what makes these new offerings different from what's existed for a little while. Predictive AI and machine learning has been around for quite some time now. Actually, depending on how you define it, you could even trace it back decades. Really, it's kind of come into the mainstream more in the last few years. But what makes this generative AI separate and distinct from predictive AI? Because there was, obviously quite a splash in media earlier in the year about ChatGPT and Bard and all that. So predictive AI, the main difference is that predictive AI was typically used for specific input-output pairs, and it's trained on a much smaller set of data. So, predictive AI, I think probably a good example would be, what word are you likely to want to type next based on the last word or several words you've already entered, right? So it's fairly easy for the machine learning to come up with a short list of likely words that you want to enter. And we see that in our day-to-day life when you're texting or you're composing an email. What makes generative AI different is the size of the data that's used to train the model. So these large language models that power things like Bard and Duet AI, they're trained on much, much larger data sets, hundreds and hundreds of millions of different parameters. So this allows it to go beyond just sort of predicting one or two possible variables and actually come up with kind of new and creative content based on the sum total of its knowledge. So let's take a look at what Google's offerings are here. Before we do that, actually, we'll talk about some of the needs, consumer versus enterprise. So Google recognizes that there are going to be some different consumers out there in the world, right? You have sort of your private individuals and you have enterprises. And the way that the two are going to use these tools are significantly different. So whereas as a private person, you may ask the AI to help you create like a packing list for your vacation. As a business, you're going to be much more concerned with things like the extreme accuracy of the responses, security and compliance considerations, and then actual business focused use cases, right? Like summarizing reports or helping to compose, formal emails. So the main difference between the two on the consumer and the enterprise side are the terms of service. I mean, there are some more differences other than just that, but for all intents and purposes, if you want to know, like, hey, why shouldn't I just use Bard? Free. Why should we subscribe to Duet for Google Workspace? Well, the terms of service are significantly different for Bard. And for those of you that have actually kind of tried it out, you'll notice that there are some pretty prominent disclosures when you sign up to use Bard, and actually also the consumer equivalent of Duet, which is the labs right now. You can sign up for the Workspace labs and personal Google accounts. Um, so those terms of service are different. They're consumer terms of service. With Duet AI for Google Workspace and things like Vertex AI, you have your business terms of service. So Duet actually has the same terms of service as the rest of Google Workspace. So, if you're comfortable putting your data into Google Docs, for instance, which you should be because they have pretty solid terms, then you can comfortably use Duet and know that your data is not going to be shared with anybody else. It's not going to be used to train these large models or anything like that. So just to circle back to the actual offerings themselves here, on the consumer side, we have Bard, somewhat less well known as MakerSuite. MakerSuite is kind of like an app creation AI tool. Right now, I think that's still in like a private preview. You need to sign up to or sort of apply to get access to it. On the enterprise side, we have Vertex generative AI. There's a model garden in Vertex. And we also have the generative AI app builder. So these things are different from Duet. In this demo and this presentation, we're going to focus on Duet, but I do want to do just kind of like a quick overview of Vertex, because that may also interest many of you in the audience. And we probably will at some future date be running a Vertex focused demo as well. So Vertex is part of Google Cloud Platform. And there are, as I mentioned, a model garden in there that you can use to create your own custom AI-powered apps. So if you want to, for instance, create a, let's say, like a custom, I'm trying to think of a good example, but like a custom like support chatbot, you can use Vertex. And you can either use just the model garden if you want to code the whole thing yourself, and then that model would be powered by, on the back end, by Google's large language models. And they have different models for different use cases. There's like an Imagen model or Imagine, I think is how they pronounce it, for image generation. There are some different models like Palm. You probably have heard Palm 2. For text-based responses, things like that. So the model garden in Vertex you can use to power your own apps that you completely kind of build from scratch. There's also this generative AI app builder, which is a much more user-friendly tool in Vertex. And this allows you to pretty easily build, I think for now it's primarily text-based, but that may be expanding, tools. So if you do want to build, like, again, going back to that example of a chat bot or customer service on your website, or internal support or whatever, you can, with no or very little code required through this user interface, you can upload all of your documents that you want to use to train this sort of adapter layer for the AI. And all of that stuff stays within your Google Cloud Platform. So it's all secure. It's kind of in its own silo and not used to train the large language models or anything that power this. So low or no code required. There's like a prompt tuning tool in there, so you can actually test what outputs, what answers it's going to give. You can weight, you can tell it to weight their responses one way or another. So very useful. And then it gives you an embed code for if you want to insert that tool into your own website or intranet or whatever. So anyways, I don't want to go too far into the weeds on Vertex because that's a whole separate topic. But again, check that out, read up on that. It's a really cool offering. We'll be doing some demos on that in the future. So let's talk more about Duet AI, because that's why we're all here. So this is going to be part and parcel of Google Workspace, at least if you have the license for it. It's going to be directly integrated with Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Gmail, and then it's also sort of going to be a background tool in Google Meet, where it'll enhance the quality of your video quality, audio quality, translation, captions, things like that. So it'll be AI powered to do some kind of real time quality enhancements. The way that the licensing works for Duet is it's an add-on license for Google Workspace. So if you're familiar with like Google Voice, for instance, or and this is kind of going by the wayside now, but they had extra storage licenses and things like that for Workspace that you can assign to users. That's basically how Duet AI, how the licensing model is going to work. So right now, Duet is in kind of a like a beta mode. It's like a preview mode. And I do want to call that out also because I'm going to showcase the features right now that are available for Wursta in our demo environment. There will be more features rolled out for Duet between now and when it goes into general availability, which I think is supposed to be in another month or so. So we'll show everything that we've got that we can show now, but there will be more. But anyways, these are add-on licenses that you can purchase. You can then assign them to specific users. So you don't need to assign a license to like every single user in your environment. You can kind of choose who this might benefit the most based on the functionality that it has. And again, there's two main ways that this differs from Bard. Bard is kind of a separate web page that you go to. Bard does have some tools where you can export directly to Gmail or Docs, so you can export your responses. Duet is baked right into Gmail and Docs, and we'll see that in just a second when we go into the demo. And again, I just want to reiterate, Bard is available. Even if you have Workspace, you can enable Bard for your users, but you do want to be cautious in that regard because, again, even though it's an additional Google app that you can enable for use for Workspace users, the terms of service for it are different. So you want to be very careful about what information you put into Bard. Google themselves recommend that you do not put in any kind of confidential or proprietary information into Bard. So that being said, let's take a look at Duet, which is safe to enter confidential or proprietary information. So we'll do a quick demo of this, and I'll showcase some of the features, some example prompts, and use cases. The main thing that this is going to be used for is, in my mind, sort of additional efficiency. It's going to be like, as I guess the military would call a force multiplier, where you're going to take an individual and make that person more efficient. So they'll be able to get more done in a given period of time. This is not something that, at least, in its current state, it's not going to replace anybody or do somebody's job for them completely in an automated way. But what it is going to help you do, as we'll see here in just a minute, is it will help you write an email that might have taken you 15 minutes to write, just sitting there, and get that down to like 4 or 5 minutes, maybe less. The AI will do most of the work for you, and then you just kind of tweak the responses. So let's take a look at how that works. So we're going to start out with Gmail, and what you'll see here when you have a Duet license is this bar down here at the bottom when you're composing in Gmail. So we have Help Me Write. We'll just click on this. And again, this is kind of similar to Bard, where there's sort of an open input. So we can, put in, let's say, for Gmail, I'm going to tell it to write an email about an upcoming company retreat. I'm just going to paste this in for my little cheat sheet to save us some time here. So we'll hit create. And depending on the complexity of your request, this usually takes, a few seconds, not really all that long. So you can see here that, it's not bad, right? So dear team, running to share some exciting news. It just kind of made up some dates, but we can change that, obviously. Theme of the retreat, again, you can update that with your own details, but the verbiage is actually not too bad. Let's say that I want to formalize this. Let's see what it comes up with there. So this drop down here you can use to refine your the response. So yeah, hope this finds you well, blah blah blah, right? So, and now let's do one more thing here. We'll ask it to elaborate. and it's just going to make the email a little bit longer. This one's probably not that great of an example because it doesn't have too much to go on, but you get the idea, right? So you might sit there and think, well, how do I want to word this? This is going to do it most of the work for you, and then you just kind of go in and do your own inputs. You can also ask it to shorten, and there's an I'm feeling lucky. This is going to do just kind of random stuff, like it'll create a poem or something for the email, usually kind of more silly type of responses. When you're satisfied with at least satisfied with what the AI has come up with, and you can actually expand upon this if you want, right? So I can add in my own details. You could start to put in your own dates here if you wanted to, and then it would update that. But if you're satisfied with it, you just hit insert, and then it's going to plug it into the actual draft, and then you can go in and make your own changes. So right now, that's the Gmail component of this. Let's jump over to a Google Doc. So we have a similar help me write feature in Google Docs. And for this one, we'll just show, let's ask it to create a job rec. So I'm going to have an example here that I'm just going to paste in. And whereas now, many of you may already have templates for this, but if you've ever had to create something like a job rec from scratch, then you're probably doing Google searches trying to figure out, like, oh, let's look for some examples of job postings, and let me just make sure I'm not missing anything, and what fields do I want to put in here. So this does a pretty good job because it obviously has access to so much information that's been fed into it. So it's got your title, location, salary, benefits, job description. So again, this is stuff that you would fill in with your own details, obviously, but it gets you part of the way there. And just like in Gmail, we can refine or elaborate on this. So let's do elaborate. You can also ask it to rephrase. So if you're not happy with kind of the tone of it or the flow of it, you can ask it to rephrase. I mean, obviously, that's a little bit more useful for things like just written out paragraphs of text versus this posting. So if we ask it to elaborate, it's just adding more bullet points here. It's going to add some stuff about the company, the role, responsibility. So it's not bad, right? So if I hit insert, just like in Gmail, it actually plugs this in. One kind of cool thing to point out here is that it does actually make use of some of the features in Google Docs. So these are the thing called variables. If you haven't used this, you can insert like these smart chips. And so you have these variables where if you update one, it updates it across the document. So that's pretty cool. If you ask it to type an email, I believe sometimes it'll actually use the email format building block and things like that. So pretty clever. There will be more features coming out too. There's going to be an advanced proofreader that's supposed to come out before general availability, and that's going to be more like your editor, your personal editor. It'll make beyond just spell checking, grammar suggestions. It'll make recommendations for tone and flow and all that good stuff. Okay, so last component here. Let's take a look at what's available in Google Sheets right now. Now, there's a lot more to come in Sheets, and if you've tried out Bard can do some pretty cool stuff in Sheets. It can help write formulas and it can help write even some scripting. Right now in Duet, again, because this is still in sort of like a beta mode, those features are not part of this module. But right now, what they have is this organization tool. So this is really good for creating project plans, task lists, things like that. So you can ask it to create these templates, and it'll kind of come up with some sample plans for you to use. So you can see here, it's got tasks, start date, due date. And then what you can do is you can refine this by being more specific. So now I'm going to say, create the template, include the following values in this status column. So you can see now it's added my stuff here. And if I just go all out, so I've got a whole bunch of other specific things, right? So make column A the work breakdown structure. So if I want work breakdown, we'll have it do that. and assign to, which it kind of has that. And I want column B to be the tasks. So let's see what it comes up with here. So you can see it did the work breakdown. It's actually, sometimes it's kind of interesting right now the way you use it. Sometimes the responses are slightly different. Like for me, the last time I did it, it actually had a few examples where it would do the 1.1, 2.1, all that. But it regardless, it put the column in here as I asked it to do. And it put the task in the appropriate column, has the right values here. So again, it's just sort of a quick time saver. There will be, I believe the next module that they're supposed to release for this for Sheets to try out is a data classification tool. So I'm interested to see how that's going to function. I assume that'll help with kind of data labeling and organization. So anyways, with that, I am going to that kind of wraps up the demo. So I'm going to hand it back over to Nick, who will talk about a little bit of some of Wursta's offerings around AI, and then we'll open it up for any questions.
I appreciate it, Brian. That was some good info. I actually kind of learned a little bit more about Duet AI myself, and we've had it for a bit. But with Duet AI's general availability right around the corner, here at Wursta, we're able to help you and your organization not only gain access to Duet AI, but assist in whether that's implementation, deployment, and even training services and more. With that said, though, if anyone has any questions, either feel free to come off mute or type a question in chat.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is design thinking workshops? Is that with the team or the company that you do it for? Like, do you have generic meetings, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that we structure these is typically, and it can vary from organization to organization, but typically we'll have kind of like these workshop sessions where we get a bunch of people in the room, and they could be IT oriented, or they could just be from different departments or a cross section of different departments, and we kind of cover a lot of this same stuff. This is more pertinent, I think, to Vertex, but we could also do it for Duet. But we talk about like, okay, well, what do you guys do every day, and what kind of things do you think AI could help with, right? So people might, if they're from their support department, they might, or sales department, they might say, oh yeah, it'd be great if like the chat bot that was on our website was like way more like naturally conversational and could do XYZ. Or your legal or compliance team might say, again, based on some of the use cases that we cover and how Vertex works, they might say, oh yeah, it'd be great if we could train a document proofreading tool that was trained on our own compliance documentation that we've uploaded into Vertex, and it would scan every contract, every document that we feed into it, and highlight any inconsistencies or violations of our company policy, right? So the output of that design thinking workshop would be sort of like a roadmap where we say, okay, well, here's 5 or 10 or 15 different things that we think are kind of like valid use cases. And then if you're interested in actually implementing any of those, Wursta can help create sort of like an outline or a blueprint or a proof of concept for those, and help you move forward with some or all of them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? That was a great question.
I know we had a couple dropped in chat. Kyle was asking, early access to beta is available and enabled for his org, but his account doesn't have any features. Is there a place he needs to turn on the features on his individual account?
Yeah. So I think probably without seeing your your environment, my guess is that you need to assign a license to yourself. So in the if memory serves me, it's in the billing section of the admin console. where you would add things like Google Voice licenses. I believe that you'll need to actually assign the Duet licenses to yourself as a user.
Cool.
And then I see another, yeah, I see Todd's here. How can we train the AI on our data, like order history? Yeah, so for that one, that's more like a Vertex use case than a Duet use case. So Duet is going to directly use the like Google's just kind of out of the box language models. With Vertex, what you can do, and that could be something that we do that could be done either with the Gen App Builder or just the Vertex Model Garden, again, depending on how custom you want to get with it. But the way that Vertex works is you can actually create what's called an adapter layer in there. And that's the part where you basically feed it your own data. So you could upload like as much data as you want. So it could be all of your order history, sales history, whatever. And the way that Vertex works is that an end user inputs a prompt or a query. It'll use that adapter layer for additional context or weighted decisions or anything like that. And then it does actually use the large language model to generate the response. So for most of the prompts are, all of that's done within your silo. And then what happens is Vertex encrypts the query and it wraps that with like the context of the data that it's been trained on in your environment. Then it sends that as an encrypted query to whichever the appropriate large language model is. So if it's like a text-based response, it would be Palm 2. The large language model then uses it uses itself, like it uses the LLM to generate the response. It encrypts it and it sends it back to your GCP environment. None of that data is stored, so it's just immediately like purged, and it's not used to train or improve the large language model. So the adapter layer and your own sort of contextual information all stay within, as well as any history of the prompts and responses, stay within your own GCP environment. Hopefully that was probably a little bit more than what you asked in the question, but it seems like there's a lot of interest in Vertex, so I just wanted to elaborate a bit on that. Any other questions?
There's no other. Oh, when will Vertex be available?
Yeah, so Vertex is actually right now. So Vertex is already a thing for like the existing machine learning and predictive AI, but the generative AI parts of Vertex are available in public preview, which means that anyone can sign up for it, and there's not really like an application process where you'll be approved or rejected. So you can right now set up a GCP environment, and you can sign up for the public preview for Vertex Gen AI. And if you just do like a web search for Vertex Generative AI, it's pretty easy to find the link to sign up for that.
Good question. Cool. Well, I know we are 1 minute over time, so I appreciate all the questions.
Yeah, I'll just take this one last one here. So since it's for Duet, so Duet right now, there is an application process for Duet. Again, and we can probably maybe send this out in a follow-up, but there's a form that you need to fill out to apply for Duet. I'm not sure how many more organizations Google's onboarding between now and when it's going to be generally available. But it's still worth trying to apply for. As far as the languages, I want to say that they did recently.
I believe it's in all languages Google Workspace is supported.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like from memory. I think that they did announce somewhat recently that they either are going to be rolling it out or at some point in the future, they are going to release it for like 40 different languages or something like that. Let's see if I can find anything real quick. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know offhand, so I don't want to hold everybody up. We can circle back on that also with like a follow-up when we send out, maybe when we send out the recording. But Google's plan, regardless of whether it's available right now, their plan is to launch it in other markets other than just North America, and it will be available in other languages beyond English. I'm sure that they'll start with the more like, you know, sort of the more popular languages, or so to speak, first, you know, so like Spanish, French, German, those kinds of things, and then they'll expand it from there.
Awesome. Good questions. I know we're 4 minutes over, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I appreciate everyone showing up today and attending our webinar. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to hearing from everyone soon.